Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. I'm Star Raptor and this is my spoiler-filled discussion for Star Wars Catalyst. That's right, there's going to be spoilers all over the place. I'm diving deep into this story. So if you guys plan on reading this novel in the next couple weeks, you might want to pause this, go read it, and come back. I also have a spoiler-free review, so make sure you check that out to see what score I gave it. Long story short, I really like this novel and I think it's an essential read for Star Wars fans that are going to go see Rogue One, a Star Wars story, next month. So just for that, this is why I decided to do a spoiler-filled discussion. Plus, there's people out there that just like spoilers anyway. So if you don't plan on reading the book, this is a great way for you to really learn the story of these characters such as Galen Erso and Orson Krennic. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of go through sequential order of some very big things that happened in this novel to kind of give you guys a little bit understanding of going into the movie. Alright, so the story starts off with Galen Erso and his wife Leah Erso. They're on this planet called Volt. It's a very cold climate kind of planet, sort of like Hoth. They're working for Zerpin Industries, which has Galen tasked with finding out additional ways to energy from crystals. So he's actually like replicating crystals, kind of creating different kind of ways to spark that kind of power. So next thing we know, the Separatists are coming down to the planet. They're trying to get Galen Erso because guess what? Galen Erso knows how to use this technology and he could harness it. They're thinking the Separatists he could harness it for energy in militaristic ways. So of course the Separatists, they want to go there. They want to capture him. So that's what's happening. But they get away, Galen Erso and Leia Erso, and they actually get into this really cool chase sequence, which involves this droid called a TDK model, which can actually like transform. It's pretty much like a transformer droid that helps them escape by like they're on their skis and like going around. But in a long time, basically what happens is they get captured. Galen Erso gets captured, unfortunately. So that's what happens there. But then we go into the story of Krennic. And at this point, this is the Republic. So Krennic is actually working as lieutenant commander for like the engineering corps, but he's also part of this secret super weapon, which is basically like a handful of people, including Palpatine, is in on it. A couple of the higher-ranking officers are trying to make a weapon to combat what they think the Separatists are building, since they retrieved the Death Star plans during the second battle of Geonosis. So you Clone Wars guys out there, you might remember that, they went to Geonosis again. So they got those plans for there. So the Republic is thinking that the Separatists are building this Death Star. In the meantime, the Separatists probably have some kind of idea that the Republic, so it's kind of like an arms war, kind of like similar to Russia and America. So that's kind of cool. But getting back to Krennic. So Krennic actually offers his old buddy, Galen Erso, up to the secret weapons facility people to say that, hey, he could actually develop the weapon that we've been trying to configure for the last couple years or whatever. So he has an idea where he's going to do his Black Ops mission, which was never really sanctioned to begin with. He goes to the Separatists and basically breaks the Separatists out. And he does like a fair exchange with Galen Erso. Mind you, the whole time Galen Erso, as well as his wife Leah Erso, have been in prison. Well, it's basically Galen Erso, which is in this really cold cell, and then his wife, who's pregnant with Jyn at the time, is living at the royal keep, and she's living all nice. So finally they get reunited, and Krennic comes in, saves the day, and basically they're off on their way. But one last thing Krennic does is he actually arms his Star Destroyer to basically take out the keep and a lot of innocent people. And his reason behind it was, that was part of the deal he made with Zerpin Industries to even get them out of there. Because now the Ersos are indebted to Krennic. So now they have a reason. Krennic has a reason to kind of slowly pry Galen Erso to mold him to be head researcher for this new Death Star. And so he knows his friend is neutral in this whole thing. He knew his friend during the Clone Wars wasn't picking a side for Separatists or the Republic. He was with Zerpin Industries, this very independent, neutral party. So he knows that his friend never wants to do anything with military. And in the meantime, Krennic's advisors like Vizier and some of the other high-ranking people are saying, Krennic, we gave you these resources to get this Galen Erso. Nothing's happening. What the hell's going on? So, he's kind of feeling under pressure, Krennic, but he's telling them, look, it takes time, and this is the only guy in the galaxy that could possibly harness this weapon. So you guys have to give me time to kind of tailor this guy to slowly bring him into the fold. The whole time they're keeping this a secret. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the Kyber crystals, which were talked about a lot in this novel. So Kyber crystals, according to Galen Erso, are actually living in a sense. If you guys read Ahsoka, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but crystals actually adapt to the alignment of the Jedi. So if you're a dark Jedi, your crystal will turn red, and if you're a good Jedi, then they're going to turn green, yellow, blue, what have you. So that was kind of a cool connection, because now we can kind of see those pieces, going together. So now that Krennic rescued Galen, he has Galen on Coruscant, just kind of keeping a low profile. Galen's trying to get a job, and no one's really biting. So Krennic, in the meantime, he's trying to ramp up the production on the Death Star, and they're using Geonosis as like their base in the big asteroid belt, but they're actually running out of resources. And it's kind of funny to note, because they actually did get the Geonosians to actually start building the Death Star, but some of them were having riots and whatnot because there wasn't enough work. So that was kind of cool. But getting back to what Krennic was doing, now he used the same smuggler. His name is Haas Orbit. This is the same guy that helps him get those separatists. He's using the same smuggler to basically set these planets up that have very rich resources. So he's using a smuggler to basically haul arms over to these planets, right? And he's actually like setting up these planets, saying, "Hey, look, these guys were dealing arms," and then the Empire comes in and says, "Hey, this is illegal. We're taking over the planet because this is the law. You're breaking the law." So that's the way that Krennic is getting these resources. And what's even more important about how he's getting these resources is he's getting them from these what's so-called legacy planets, which are basically planets that are supposed to remain pristine, and they shouldn't really have a lot of development going on them. They kind of save them for the populace, as a nice place to visit and whatnot. Not a lot of industry is supposed to be on them, but Krennic bypasses that by his own like little devious plan, and he's been doing this all along. Not to mention, he also has experimental groups with these other Republic experimental groups testing out things, and certain things are backfiring with these crystal experiments, and he's using them to cover up. He's saying, oh, there's been anarchists that have come in and messed things up, but it's really, he's not really like letting the researchers take enough time to slowly research this, and they're getting kind of pressured, and they're basically killing thousands of people by letting these crystals just go about their way and killing people when they're trying to test them. Another important thing to note here is that Galen, during this time, he secludes himself, especially on Coruscant. He is over there, he doesn't know what to do with himself when he's not researching. Like, that's the only thing he knows how to do with his life, is to think of theories and mathematical equations. If he's without this as a profession, he is kind of lost. So he's getting more and more antsy trying to find a job. But in the background, Krennic has basically gone out to all these other companies that would hire him and say, you can't hire him, it's Imperial business or Republic business, because at this point it's still the Republic, it's still the Clone Wars. Another interesting thing to note here is that Tarkin actually interrogates Galen for being held a prisoner with the Separatists, and Tarkin basically interrogating him, say, hey, look, have you released any information about Republic troop movements or fleets or anything of the sort? And Galen is saying, look, I had no freaking clue, basically. Like, why are you pinning this on me? And I thought it was kind of cool, because Galen also did this with his interrogator for the Separatists. This guy is no joke. He might be a scientist, but he's not your average scientist. Like, this guy will stand up for himself, and he won't take crap from anybody. He'll talk back to whatever superior he's talking to. So I thought it was kind of funny, because he's talking crap back to Tarkin. You know Tarkin. We all love Tarkin. He's just like that hard-edged character with that dry sense of humor, and basically Galen is just like going back on him, which is kind of funny. But in the end, it actually is mentioned later on in the book that Tarkin and Galen kind of like were befriended after that little talk they had. So that was kind of cool. Another thing to note is that Coruscant actually has artificial gravity and atmosphere in most of the planet, so that is really interesting, because Galen, and Lyra especially, she's more of an adventurer type, his wife, so she's always making comments about how she hates to be in the artificial atmosphere and breathing in, the recycled air and all this stuff. Another thing to note is that Galen is in debt to Krennic at this point, in severe debt with all these jobs Krennic has gotten him, because they were both buddies back in their years of growing up. in the Futures program, the Republic Futures program, I believe it was called. So now Krennic has set up basically Galen with this job, and he set him up with freeing him. So now Galen is feeling more and more in debt to Krennic, and he's thinking to himself, like, he's talking to Lyra about this, saying, hey, look, I really owe it to Krennic to continue to help him out. Alright, so talk a little bit more about Lyra, which is Galen's wife. We learned that she actually is very spiritual in a way that Galen is not. She's more in tune to nature, even actually insinuating that she's sensitive to the Force. She actually talks a lot about the Force. She feels the Force around her, or the living beings. I think she's Force sensitive, but she just wasn't ever really trained. We do see her in that one trailer where she's giving Jin that little crystal, that Kyber crystal, saying trust in the Force. So I actually knew that, or had a feeling she was going to be somewhat included with the Force. But she's also at this one point introspectively thinking about the Jedi and how if they were actually blinded by war. And this is right before Order 66. So I thought that was really cool how she was starting to feel that herself, like what are the Jedi doing themselves. And this leads me into the next point of the story. This is about midway through the story, guys. So we have Galen, and he got set up by Krennic to go to this mediocre job, probably to get frustrated by, this is all planned by Krennic to get Galen frustrated, to get a job with Krennic at the Republic. So basically, Galen and Lyra and Jin, they move to this planet called Lakori, which has these insect kind of beings, but it's attacked by the Separatists. And I mentioned this in my review. This is one of my negative points I want to elaborate on because I can spoil it here, because I already told you guys about this. Is spoilers, obviously. Let's see, Galen, Jin, and Lyra are like the last people alive. And these Separatist forces are coming in. You got all the droids, the Vulture droids, and there's just battle droids. They're all chasing them, and they get up onto this high hill kind of thing. And then they all just fall over because it's like, oh, they just shut down the droid army. You know what I mean? It's just like, how does that work? Like, they're about to die. And of course, the story would have it that all the droids just at that opportune time just collapsed. I thought that was a little bit crazy, a little bit far-fetched. But hey, whatever. So after that, Galen is moved, and he accepts the offer from Krennic to work for, now it's the Empire. You know, it changes to the Empire from the Republic. So we go to Coruscant, where Galen actually accepts a job that the Emperor kind of started, called the Project Celestial Power. Now this to Galen looks like it's a legit thing. Like, it's going to conserve power, give it to people's planets that really need it. So he's going to be working with Kyber crystals, and he has no idea that this is connected to the Death Star program. This is where we start to see things going downhill. So really cool is that Krennic offers Galen the chance to do this research with this briefcase, and it's full with Kyber crystals. So we later learn that these are actually Jedi lightsaber crystals, these little tiny Kyber crystals. And we also get a cool connection to the Clone Wars, that Galen is shipped this humongous Kyber crystal, and we later find out it was retrieved by a couple Jedis we might know during the Clone Wars unfinished arc on Utapau. So very cool connective tissue right there. We also learned that within weeks of Order 66, the Empire was able to spread word about the Jedi, and they became quickly a myth that soon after their demise, which was really efficient. Another thing to note is that Krennic and Tarkin throughout this half of the book are actually fighting to see who's going to get control of the Death Star. So they're kind of backstabbing each other, which is a really cool thing, because we know Imperials, they don't really follow the rules all that much all the time. So it's really cool to see that relationship start to form. Okay, so something else about the research that Galen Erso is doing, he actually has access to this special facility on Coruscant. He can get basically whatever he wants, including Jedi datacrons. So that to me is really interesting. Like, he has that much power, he has that much influence at that point, he can actually just request whatever the hell he wants. So later on in the novel, Krennic actually separates the Ursos by splitting up Jin Erso as well as Lyra Erso, and he sends them off to this place called Alpin to do some kind of archaeological research. But it's really just a ploy to get them away from Galen, because Krennic is thinking that Galen is being disturbed by his wife and his child, who obviously live with him at that facility. So his whole plan is he wants to get them away from him so he can concentrate on ultimately persuading him to get into that secret project. So we continually see that after all these years, this is a couple years have lapsed since the rescue of Galen. It's been like 3.5 years or something like that. And it's insane because he's slowly, like, Krennic is so patient with us. Like, he's slowly, like I said before, trying to mold Galen. At this point, Galen is really vulnerable because his family isn't with him, so Krennic goes and talks with him and actually sends him on a special trip to one of those facilities I mentioned earlier that backfired with the crystal, and basically Krennic uses to cover up that, oh yes, this is what happens when the anarchists get to somewhere. They destroy it and we have to protect against them. So he gives him this whole spiel, and eventually Galen accepts it, and under the guise that Krennic says, hey look, this could happen to your family. Your family could be under extreme danger if we don't do something about this. And basically, Galen says, okay, I'll help out with doing something that you want. And that was really it. That's when it starts to get worse and worse and worse. And now Galen is working on the weapon, and he doesn't even know he's working on it. So finally, Lyra comes back with Jin from Alpine from a couple months ago, and she finds out that Galen's even more obsessed with his research. It's basically, he is in a prison of his own mind, basically, because he's so obsessed with this stuff. He doesn't care about Jin, he doesn't care about Lyra, he just wants to work. He's like basically getting no sleep. He even mentions that the Kyber crystals, he thinks, are actually causing him to lose the sleep. Like some crazy auras about them that's like messing him up or whatever. On the other side of things, so we have that character, that smuggler character, the Dresselian guy. His name is Haz Obit, right? And he was the guy who was working for Krennic to do these special Black Ops missions to kind of get the Empire more planets. Well, he actually got a message from Krennic to do another mission again, but he's actually going to double cross Krennic. So what he does is he gets more of these smugglers together, including one of our favorite characters, guys, from Clone Wars. We get Saw Gerrera in Star Wars Catalyst, and Saw Gerrera is great because already from the get-go he's that rebel freedom fighter. You know, he says he's been fighting the Separatists for so long, and the Empire is not much better. So these guys are actually going to supposed to ship these packages off to this planet, just like they've been doing what Hazabit's been doing. But they actually take a detour and they go to the other planet in the system, and they say, hey look, we're gonna fight the Empire, and then basically they start this whole war, and Tarkin shows up, and he's basically fighting against Saul and Hazobit for months and months, and it's this huge drawn out war. But you see Tarkin is so obsessed. When he sets his mind on something, he doesn't stop. He literally just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting until he's victorious. He doesn't care how many men he loses. But then at the same point, Tarkin thinks he was double-crossed by Krennic the whole time. So of course these guys are going head-to-head, you know, not directly with each other, but they're trading blows through different other aspects of things. But it's really, really interesting how much Tarkin we actually get in this. So he's trying to take over Salient, and he finally does after a while. In the meantime, Lyra is actually finding out the bigger picture of things. She's being like a detective, and she's finding out that a lot of these planets that have gone dark with the researchers they know, there's something really wrong going on. And she's the destruction on some of these planets, and she's basically telling Galen, hey look, we gotta get out of here and stuff like this. But then Krennic, on the same token, has the whole place bugged on Coruscant. So he's known about these conversations for months, and he's actually telling Lyra, hey look, if you don't stop this crap, I'm gonna do something about this. So he literally threatens him. So Galen realizes after talking to Lyra that, wow, he's been dumb this whole time. He didn't realize he was working on this weapon, along with all these other people that have been segmented to basically work on stuff that they think is really helping the communities and the planets, but it's actually making a huge super weapon. So now they are on the run. So we have Lyra who contacts Hazabit, and let's backtrack a little bit here. As I said, Hazabit was one of the smugglers that started that whole war with in the Salient system with Tarkin. Well, Tarkin ends up capturing Hazabit, and Hazabit is talking to Tarkin, and what happens is Tarkin actually finds out that Hazabit was working for Krennic, and we all know that Krennic hates Tarkin and vice versa. So Tarkin sends Hazabit out as a double agent to report back on Krennic. So at the same time, Lyra finds out that he's been free, and she contacts Hazabit and says, we gotta get the heck out of Coruscant and get out of here fast, because we know what the Empire's been doing, and we can't have Galen fall into the hands of the Empire. So who else does Hazabit send but none other than Saw Gerrera to rescue the Ersos? And basically that's where the story ends, is Saw Gerrera takes the Ersos to this planet called Lamu. And you know, it's really cool because you actually see that relationship between Jyn and Saw already starting to form when she's like 4 years old. So he leaves them on the planet, gives them like a special comm link, and says, hey, look, contact me whenever you guys need help. So in the meantime, to finish things up, Tarkin actually leaves off in this novel at Sentinel Base on Geonosis, none other. And you know, this is the same place where he picks up in his own novel Tarkin, which is also written by James Luceno. So that was really cool connective tissue. This leads literally right into that. And on the other hand, you have Krennic, and we know Krennic is pissed because he literally has just been demoted by Grand Vizier Mas Amida, and he's been demoted down to Lieutenant Commander, because he was at Commander at one point, and now he got demoted because he lost Galen, and now their Death Star project is been delayed once again. Like, this is the last thing they really need, is this super powered laser, and they have to have Galen Erso to construct this thing. So now Krennic is in an absolute rampage, and he's going to do everything in his power to scout out for Galen Erso, and that leads me into the trailer. So and that was the end of the novel. So yes, a very long-winded discussion, but that was it, guys. And I want to just talk about the trailer. So in the trailers, we see that there's going to be flashbacks in Rogue One. We see flashbacks to what will be Lamu, where we have Jyn, and she's really little with Galen, and we see Krennic coming, you know, in a shuttle with his Death Troopers showing up there. So, you know, I don't think they're going to be hiding out on this planet very long, because if you compare the ages, it's like Lamu, Jyn is like, you know, 4 or 5 in the trailer, and she's about that age in the book. So it's going to be interesting to see how they find them. But guys, I want to know what you thought about this. This is my first like spoiler discussion I've ever done. Let me know how I did. Let me know any changes I can make. I just kind of went through this like robotically to the notes I've made. So let me know in the comment section down there. Guys, how excited are you for Rogue One, a Star Wars story? Because after watching or after reading this, I haven't been more excited. Like, this is one of the best things that has happened in canon. This is the first time in canon we've had a book that really has fleshed out characters we've never known about and brought it right up to a movie. Like, I want to see more of this. Hopefully in the future we get another novel like this. I really like the idea of a prequel novel that fleshes out these characters. Now, this isn't really you don't need to know this stuff going into the movie, but for those of you that have watched this and those of you that have read this, we have a one-up on everybody else out there in the theater. We kind of know what has happened, how the relationship between Orson Krennic and Galen Erso is. So that to me is really, really cool. But guys, thanks so much for watching. Please feel free to share this video to all your friends, especially those that aren't planning on reading this novel. They would probably appreciate to learn what's going to go on before the events of Rogue One. So please do me a favor, share this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel here on YouTube so you never miss another video. I have tons of Star Wars content. But thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you always. So, did you like the video? Then make sure you rate it a thumbs up, and if you did that, go over there, hit that Star Raptor head so you subscribe to my channel. Doing so will keep you up to speed on all of my latest content, speaking of which you can see a couple of my recent uploads down below. I'm also on social media, so what are you waiting for? Let's start nerding out.